Welcome to lecture 9, and we started discussing chain reactions towards the end of the last class. And remember that I had shown you something like this, which is for an H2O2 system. So if you keep hydrogen and oxygen together, you can get reactions like this. So there is chain initiation where these hydrogen atoms are produced. These are more active species than hydrogen molecules, H2, and then after the chain initiation takes place, we have chain propagation or branching reactions. Propagations are those reactions in which the number of radicals on the left hand side and the number of radicals on the right hand side, they remain the same. In branching, there is an increase. So that increase results in a build up of active pool of radicals, and that accelerates the overall reaction rate. So if you have hydrogen and oxygen together, the overall reaction rate refers to the rate at which water is getting produced. There are many reactions, of course, but overall there is a production of H2O. So when we talk about the overall reaction rate, it is actually finally how much amount of H2O is getting produced and at what rate. So we talked about chain initiation. There is also chain propagation and branching, and then there is chain termination. So there are chain termination reactions like this. Remember, in chain termination, you have more radicals on the left, less on the right. In fact, in all the examples that we saw, we were getting less number of active species on the right. In fact, in this one species, in the third one, you get one radical out of two radicals, and in the fourth one, you again get a stable species. So everything taken together, chain initiation, chain propagation, chain branching, chain termination, this gives you a sort of chain reaction. Chain reaction means a sequence of events happening together, sequence of chemical events happening together in sequence, one after the other. So in the context of this, we want to understand this chain reaction dynamics little better. So let us consider a situation when we have A2 and B2 reacting to give you 2AB. So this is again hypothetical. So briefly we went to this H2O2 system, and that was a practical example, real example. This A2 plus B2 giving you 2AB is more of a hypothetical reaction rate, and this is overall, this is a global representation. So again, this is not exactly how reactions are taking place, this is an overall representation. So if what we are saying is that if you put A2 and B2 together, maybe these two will react with each other and give you product which is called AB. Now, as I said, there will be chain initiation. So this chain initiation is this. And this is similar to that H2 plus M giving you H plus M, and there will be also chain propagation. Which is we are constructing these equations hypothetically, but again these are very similar to many actual reactions. So A plus B2 can be something like O plus H2 giving you OH plus H. So these are K2 and K3. These K2 and K3 are the reaction rate constants for these chain propagation reactions. Convince yourself that these are chain propagation reactions. One radical on the left, one radical on the right. AB is more like a stable species because it appears in the overall global scheme. So it's more like a stable species. Similarly, B plus A2 giving you AB plus A. B is the active species, more active species on the left hand side, and A is the radical species on the right hand side. So the number of radical species is remaining the same from left to right. And then there is also chain termination, and this chain termination means A plus B plus M giving you AB plus M. So we are calling this reaction rate constant K4. Now let us also consider early stage reaction. Early stage means that the product concentrations haven't really built up, so we need not consider the reverse reactions of the reactions that I wrote. So based on that, we can write things like this. So please take a look at the reactions and be convinced that what I have written here is correct. So A2 appears in the chain initiation reaction and also in the reaction number 3. So that's why this has got two terms. So that's dA2 dt. We're talking about early stage. And dB2 dt will have how many terms? Just one, because only the second reaction, which has got K2, has B2 appearing. So this should be minus K2 A B2. How do you know where to put plus and where to place a minus sign? Law of mass action, isn't it? So we are actually thinking of law of mass action. So this is ddt of B2, and there is also product formation rate, which we call dAB dt. So please tell me how many terms this should have. 3 terms, because again from the reactions that you must have written by now, reactions 2, 3 and 4 have AB. 2, 3 and 4. So these are various rates. Now we will also try to write dA dt and dB dt. A and B are radicals, which are intermediates, which start appearing. A starts appearing in chain initiation and B appears in the chain propagation reactions, and all of course they both have the termination reaction also. So again, if we write dA dt, how many terms do you expect to see? So 4 terms. dA dt should have 4 terms, and Alright, so I have written this rather quickly, but you have to now verify. So, does this make sense? We know that there should be 4 terms, and there are 2 equations, 2 reactions in which A is getting produced. So, that is chain initiation and reaction number 3, which is chain propagation. So, A is getting produced in those 2. So, K1 and K3 terms accordingly are positive, because A is getting produced, and in reactions 2 and 4 characterized by K2 and K4, A is getting consumed. So, correspondingly you have a K2 base term which has a minus sign, and also a K4 base term which has a minus sign. So, this should be correct. Now, why do we have a 2 here? Is that clear? Yeah, so in the first equation we have 2A on the right hand side, that is the chain initiation reaction. Why is it plus 2? Because when we use law of mass action, we write the coefficient on the right hand side minus the coefficient on the left hand side, and then that whatever we get by doing that, we multiplied that by concentrations and reaction rate constant. So, that is how we got this 2. Okay, so that gives us dA dt, and we can do a similar thing for B, and we can write also dB dt. So, dB dt again, convince yourself that it should have 2 terms. Oh, this will have a 3rd term, right, because there is a termination term which I forgot to write. Yes. So, yes, 3 terms, 2 and 3. 2 and 3 are propagation reactions. There is no B in the first one, because first one is chain initiation which is producing A, it is not producing B. So, we get this. Now, we will say that we will invoke the steady state approximation for A and B. So, is that okay? That is okay, provided K2 and K3 are much smaller compared to which one? What should be the condition for steady state approximation? K2 and K3 should be small or large? But compared to K1, let us say, the reactions for intermediates, the second reaction should be small or large. Okay, going back to the simplest thing that we talked about, no, A going to B and B going to C. What happened then? K2 was much greater than K1. Similarly, here K2 and K3 should be much greater than K1. Okay, so the radicals get produced slowly, but they get consumed much faster, and K4 will also turn out to be slower. So, we can expect K4 to be also smaller. Okay. There is another reason for that. K4 is a term molecular reaction. Reaction 4 is a term molecular reaction. Term molecular reactions means 3 things coming together. So, A plus B plus N. So, since there are 3 things coming together, that is less probable. So, in that sense, K4 is actually smaller. So, K1 and K4 are smaller, K2 and K3 are expected to be larger. So, if that is the case, then we can use steady state approximation for radicals A and B, and if we do that, then we will set this to 0 and this to 0, because steady state means the rate of change of concentration of these radicals will tend to 0, correct. That is what we did last time, A going to B, B going to C. That is what we also did for the nitric oxide system, which we analyzed in the last lecture. what did we set equal to 0 in that nitric oxide example? dN dt equal to 0. So, n was at n atom, which was an active species. So, we set ddt of n equal to 0 in that case, correct. So, we do something similar, we set dA dt equal to 0 and dB dt equal to 0. So, we got now two equations which does not have derivatives. These two equations which we just now saw, after setting dA dt equal to 0 and dB dt equal to 0, they do not really have a differential term, right. They do not have any derivative out there. So, these are algebraic equations. So, these can be utilized to get concentrations of A and B, concentrations of A and B in terms of various other concentrations and rate coefficients. And the reason we are doing all this is that for a chain reaction system and hypothetical chain reaction mechanism, we want to see what the radical concentrations depend on. Okay, so, the concentration of A can be obtained and the concentration of B can also be obtained after we invoke the steady state approximation, which is dA dt equal to 0, dB dt equal to 0. So, we got these equations. So, we can get A and B concentrations. Once we get expressions for concentrations of A and B, we will be able to interpret these expressions. So, that is the first purpose that we have today. So, let us do that. Let us write the concentration of A. So, what we are doing is solving for A, but I am not writing the intermediate steps. Yes, so this is A. Now, there is a similar expression for B that I am not writing. So, let us keep an eye on this quantity, which I will bring up in a few minutes. You can see this is a little clumsy expression. This is A2, B2. So, you can see that it depends on this K1 by K2 here, it depends on again ratio of K1 by K2, but this is now K2 by K1 in this expression. This also has ratio K3 by K4 and various other concentrations. So, that is concentration of A. We will just come back to this in a few minutes, but let me also say that once you get the concentrations of A and B, you can in fact, for example, once you get the concentration of A, you can go to this expression for ddt of B2 and you can get ddt of B2. So, radical concentration has already been obtained. So, that expression can be substituted here, then you can get an expression for ddt of B2. So, that expression So, we had this term which was 4 K2 K3 divided by K1 K4 into B2 by m squared also in the expression for A. We had that, right. this is one expression, the other expression was this one, this expression for A. Both have this 4 K2 K3 divided by K1 K4 B2 m squared. So, there is an assumption that we can make. We can make this assumption regarding this term in the circle, that 4 K2 K3 B2 and 1. This is an assumption. An assumption, but does it sound okay? Yeah, because K2 and K3 are supposed to be large. K1 is small because that is initiation, small rate of production of A, and K4 is small essentially because termination reactions tend to be slower, okay, at least at lower pressures. And this assumption will probably work out. Now, another possible assumption that we can make to further simplify things is that not only is this much greater than 1, but the square root of this is also greater than this is much greater than 1, not only greater than 1, much greater than 1, but you can also assume probably that a square root of this is also much greater than 1. Maybe that will also hold. Okay. If it does not hold in some case, then of course we cannot apply this, but broadly speaking this will hold, that even the square root of this will be much greater than 1. Now, you can sense why I am saying all this, because this has got 1 plus something, let us call this an x. So, this is 1 plus x to the power half, 1 plus x the whole thing to the power half, and if x is actually very small, right, then you can use the binomial sort of expansion to simplify it. That is the whole idea. Again, we will not do all the steps, but if we do this kind of an assumption that this is much greater than 1, but even the square root of this is much greater than 1 and some simplifications thereof, then we will be able to write this. And so this was 1, this is A, and I just wrote ddt of B2 also. K1 K3 divided by K2 K4. All right, so let us just go back to all this. This one, this is the first expression that we got for A. How did we get it? After invoking steady state approximation for radical concentrations A and B. What are its characteristics? One important aspect that you will notice is that the concentration of A is now written in terms of concentrations of stable species. This does not have B. The expression for A does not have the concentration of B, for example, and it has A2, B2, which are convenient to handle because A2 and B2 are there in the reactant mixture. Okay. So, that is one good thing. Remember that radicals are more difficult to measure, more difficult to handle, and one way of handling radical concentrations is to invoke the steady state approximation, if at all it is applicable. In this case, we expect this to be applicable. So, this is concentration of A, and we have now simplified it after making some assumption, and after that assumption we finally now get A2 by B2 to the power half, K1 K3 divided by K2 K4 to the power half. And what can we say from here? So, we can say that concentration of A will depend on the ratio K1 by K4. That is one thing which we can clearly see from here. So, if the initiation reaction is strong, then concentration of A will be higher. Initiation reaction strong means K1 is large, and if K4 is small, then also A will be large. For a given K1, if K4 is small, then concentration of A will be large, because A is getting consumed in K4 in reaction 4. Okay. What else? It also has a ratio K3 by K2. Now, we do not expect K3 by K2 ratio to play a very important part, because K2 and K3 rates can be comparable, because these are both propagation reactions. So, we expect that these are not largely different. K1 and K4, okay, all right. If we say that the initiation is somehow more strong compared to termination, maybe K1 by K4 ratio will have an influence. Or in another case, if compared to K1, K4 is large, then the termination reaction will have more of an influence. But K2 and K3, if we say that both being propagation reactions, similar type of reactions, they are kind of comparable, then propagation reactions will not have such a big effect on this. So, concentration of A depends mainly on the ratio of K1 by K4, the ratio of propagation step to the termination step. So, this is A, and the other expression that we had was dB2 dt. dB2 dt was first, this is the expression that we got for dB2 dt, that is the first one. dB2 dt, this expression came after we made the steady state approximation, and then further we made assumption like this assumption as well as the square root of this to be much greater than 1. So, after doing all that, we got this last expression for dB2 dt, which is like this one here. So, this is the last one. This is the last expression we got for d dt of B2. Again, this is written in terms of A2 and B2, it does not have radicals. So, this is easier to deal with. And we can also see from here that in this case K2 and K3 will have strong influence. So, if you increase K2 and K3, then the rate of change of concentration of B2 will also get significantly affected, because this is no longer a K2 by K3 ratio, this is K2 into K3. So, this will have this sort of an effect. So, we analyzed concentration of A, and we also analyzed we also analyzed ddt of B2. Now, why are these important? Because concentration of A tells you about intermediate concentration, and ddt of B2 tells you about the rate of reaction. ddt of B2 must relate to rate of reaction, because by overall rate of reaction we mean the rate at which A2 is getting consumed, B2 is getting consumed, and AB is getting formed. And these expressions in some sense tell you about the rate of the reaction. So, ddt of B2 tells you about the overall rate of reaction, and this overall rate of reaction depends strongly on the propagation step reaction rate constant, because it depends on K2 and K3. If propagation rates are faster, then the overall reaction will be faster. For radical concentration A, we saw that K2 and K3 did not matter much because it was in the form of K2 by K3 ratio. So, these are learnings which we will keep with us as we later on analyze more realistic systems. Now, just one more point before, or two more things before we proceed further. One is that we looked at this term and we actually assumed this to be much greater than 1, and we said that this is probably okay because K2 and K3 are supposed to be larger than K1 and K4. That was the justification for this. Okay, that was the justification because K2 and K3 are propagation reactions. Now, even this is not always valid. This is not valid, for example, if the pressure is high. Okay. Now, let's for a moment I will ask you to think about this. Where does pressure come in? You have this here. Where is pressure?
Concentration.
Yeah, concentration of M and concentration of B2 also. Okay. Is pressure included in K? Pressure is included in K or not included in K? Okay. How do you know? How do you know that it is not pressure dependent? K is dependent on pre-exponential factor, activation energy, maybe some temperature to the power small number, some small temperature exponent, and it also is dependent on temperature through that energy factor, but we do not see pressure explicitly. In fact, pressure is not there, right. So, to a good approximation, reaction rate constants are pressure independent. Okay. So, pressure is not in K1, K3, K1, K2, K3, K4, but pressure is there in B2 and M, B2 and M concentrations. So, what is the effect of pressure on this assumption? Again, what have we learned today? We learned that for a chain reaction system, the radical concentration is not strongly dependent on the propagation rate constants, whereas the rate of reaction, which was d dt of B2, is strongly dependent on B2 on K2 and K3, that is the propagation rate constant. That is something which you can appreciate and also remember for future analysis, correct. But all these two conclusions that I just now told you about, summary of our observations, these are in fact valid provided this quantity which I have marked is much greater than 1, isn't it? So, the question that I am asking is this always much greater than 1, or does it have some kind of a limitation depending on the pressure that you have? This will depend on pressure. Okay. Now, how does it depend on pressure? We understood that K1, K2, K3, K4 are not dependent on pressure. Okay. So, what about B2 and M? These are dependent on pressure, you are saying, but how? Okay, so that's correct. We'll have to bring in ideal gas. So we'll write this. See, ideal gas is this. Capital N subscript I is the number of moles of the ith species. So if you want, we can write where Na is the number of moles of A, some A. So this means chi A, the P into V, Na R bar T, or Na by V, what is that called? Concentration of A. This is just some general A, need not be the A that we were talking about, that radical, just some species A. So, this I am doing as some sort of a side note, okay, that is not part of the main discussion. So, Na by V is concentration of A, because concentration is kilomole per cubic meter. So, that is number of moles per unit volume, and how much is that now? Na by V is chi A P, P is the pressure, divided by R bar T. So, the mole fraction, if the mole fractions are not changing, then concentrations are directly proportional to pressure at a given temperature. Okay. So, that means if you think of keeping the same concentrations of same mole fractions of these reactants in a mixture, and if you just increase the pressure, what happens? B2 by m squared, B2 by m squared will decrease with pressure, okay, because B2 by m, concentration of B2 divided by concentration of m squared will be like 1 over pressure. So, if you increase pressure, this term which we were considering to be much greater than 1 will keep decreasing as you increase the pressure, it decreases significantly, because it is inversely proportional to pressure. So, it may not be beyond a certain value of pressure, it may not be much greater than 1. Okay. So, then all this that I have told you will not really work very well. So, that is one thing that we will remember. Two conclusions: radical concentrations not strongly dependent on propagation rate constants, and the rate of production of B2, that is the rate of reaction rate, is strongly dependent on propagation rate constants, correct? Yeah. These two concentrations, yeah. So, what I said is, let us look at this one. Just look at this one. This is the final simplified version based on that assumption that that particular thing is much greater than 1, that ratio which we are talking about. So, here we could see that propagation rate constants are in the ratio. So, this is K3 by K2 in this expression, and we expect the propagation rate constants to be similar. That means, K2 and K3 we expect these to be somewhat similar, and if these are similar, then the concentration of A probably does not have a strong relation to propagation rate constants. You are asking something? Yeah. Okay. And K1 and K4, it has K1 by K4. So, that means if you increase K1, if it is possible that K1 is significantly more than K4. So, if that is the case, initiation is strong than termination, then concentration of A is more driven by the initiation reaction. On the other hand, if K4, the termination reaction, is stronger than the initiation reaction, then termination will have a stronger effect. Okay. So, that is one conclusion. This is about the radical concentration, that is the intermediate concentration. Now, the other conclusion that we had was about this. It was about this one. So, here it was quite clear that it is not K2 by K3 this time, it is K2 into K3. So, if the propagation rate constants are higher, okay, for example, if you have higher temperatures, maybe that has driven K2 and K3 both higher up. So, in that case, ddt of B2 also goes up significantly. So, the propagation rate constants will have a major effect on the rate of disappearance of B2. Overall, think about this, overall A2 and B2 are combining to give you AB. So, if it is like H2 and O2, they are combining to give you H2O. So, if I write ddt of B2, it is like writing either ddt of H2 in a hydrogen oxygen system, or like ddt of O2, which is also again something similar. So, ddt of B2 relates to an overall reaction rate. Okay. So, that is strongly dependent on propagation rate constants. So, these are the two conclusions that I mentioned, but the third thing is not a conclusion, but caution. The caution is that if caution is this, that this one, the one which you have in the circle, is not exactly valid if the pressures are high. That is what I just now explained, that if your pressures are high, then B2 by m squared, which is proportional to 1 over pressure, will be small, and that will make this term smaller, and it may not be much greater than 1. Correct? So, we will have to be happy with this now. I know that this is a little difficult because it is abstract, because it is in terms of A and B, but we will have to come back to this later. Now, we will look at, we will go to that H2O2 system in a little while. I do not know whether it will be possible today, but our next target will be to analyze an hydrogen oxygen system, where you will see some demonstrations of all this. Our ideas will start becoming more clear, and we will be more concrete about all these that we have learned. One more caution here, which I did not tell you about, whereas we talked about chain initiation and chain propagation and chain termination, but in this hypothetical reaction mechanism there was no chain branching. If you have chain branching, then the build up of the radical pool will be much faster. That will accelerate the reaction, and that is how flames are in fact self sustaining. The reason that flames propagate, the reasons of the flames are so reactive is because of the build up of radical pool through chain branching. So, that was not part of this discussion. So, we have to remember that also. Yeah.
Now, just please see, if propagation rates are high, the disappearance of B2 will be very high. Then the D2 disappearance is also related with the A2, because until unless it reacts with A2, B2 will not be consumed. So, does it mean that once we have the propagation rates high, then A2 and B2 both will be consumed high?
Yeah, I think ddt of A2 and ddt of B2, if you look at those, it is if you talk about ddt of B2, it depends on concentration of A, which in turn depends on how A2 is giving you A. So, these are related definitely. So, in overall sense, if B2 ddt of B2 goes up, ddt of A2 also goes up, and you get the higher rate of production of AB. So, that will happen. All right. So, our next target will be a hydrogen oxygen system, but before that I want to take up something else, a small topic which is also important, as we are going to talk about chemical time scales. So, talk about chemical kinetics, no doubt, and in chemical kinetics we are concerned with rates of equations, rates at which species get consumed. So, in a way we are concerned about time, is not it? Why is time so important? Remember what I mentioned to you regarding engine combustion. I told you to do this sort of thinking, that okay, we have a 4-stroke engine, this is running at a certain RPM. So, these 4 strokes are equivalent to how many revolutions? 2 revolutions. 4 strokes together one after the other give you 2 revolutions, and you know the number of revolutions per minute from the engine RPM, and you can calculate easily how much time is required for 2 revolutions. Okay. And the combustion time is not the same as 2 revolutions. Is it the same as 1 stroke? Not even that. In fact, you burn as quickly as possible, and then the hot gases push the piston down, they expand. So, in the expansion stroke, first you have this combustion taking place, and then the hot gases are quickly produced, which push the piston down. That is how it works. So, the combustion time is actually less than a time of a stroke. So, we can calculate the time which is required for combustion, which you can give to combustion. Combustion is necessary. Without combustion you will not get these hot gases which will push the piston down. Combustion is central to the process. So, you want combustion, but at the same time you do not want to give it much time, because ultimately it is not combustion which is the purpose. Ultimately it is production of these high temperature gases which will try to expand and push the piston down. That is the purpose, right. So, what was the time? I think some of you calculated that.
50 milliseconds for 5000 RPM.
5000 RPM it was
around 50 milliseconds.
50 milliseconds. Okay, so it is of the order of milliseconds. Okay, I did for 5000 RPM I did not do the calculation, but so I can't confirm 50, but that sort of time is reasonable. Okay, so if it is such a small time, then we have to see what the combustion time scales are. Okay, if you give if this time this is a combustion time or this is a stroke time, the expansion stroke time. So, what he says is the time for that stroke, expansion stroke, is 50 milliseconds. So, in that time will the combustion be complete? Will the reactions go fast enough so that the reaction gets complete? So, that is important. So, that is the physical time which he is talking about. Okay, so time for that one particular stroke. Is that enough for combustion to take place? Because you have octane burning with air and very large number of reactions, must be, because even that H2O2 system, we had a brief look at that, that has quite a few reactions. If it is methane, more reactions. If it is any hydrocarbon, large number of reactions. So, all these reactions, will these take place in less than 50 milliseconds? We do not know at this point of time, but of course it does, because otherwise how do you run these engines? But we have to talk about chemical time scale and understand this a little better. So, we will talk about the chemical time scale of bimolecular reactions. So, we have A plus B giving you C plus D. So, these are bimolecular reactions, and we have dA dt is this, and we will do things like this. We will say A naught and B naught are the initial conditions. So, we should be able to write this. So, what is this X? X is the change in concentration of A. It was initially A naught. So, A naught becomes A naught minus A. A is the instantaneous concentration, so at some time t. So, the concentration of A has changed from A naught to A. So, X is that change, which is A naught minus A, which has to be the same as B naught minus B, because every time one molecule of A gets destroyed, another molecule of B also is getting destroyed. So, we can write the same X for the change in concentration of B. That should be correct. Okay, so, we can write B in terms of A, and once we do that, we can take this expression for B and put it in here, so that we get an expression which is only in terms of A, right. All right, please do not think that this A and B are intermediates and radicals and steady state approximations, not that. All right, so this is again, this might confuse you, but we are talking about that same bimolecular reactions. A and B are just two species. I am not talking about reactive intermediates or anything like that. This is how we started the discussion some time back. When we were talking about bimolecular reactions, we wrote A plus B giving you C plus D. Yeah. all right. Yeah. So what I said is that B, concentration of B can be replaced here in terms of concentration of A. So we get dA dt in terms of concentration of A only, right, because B naught and A naught are known. These are the initial concentrations. So we can get dA dt in terms of concentration of A. That means we can integrate all this. It will take us some effort, but it should be possible. In fact, we might like to do it sometime at home. So the solution for this after integration so we can get this, and again you can try doing this at home. Please confirm that this is correct. So that is this expression. So we define a chemical time scale now, which we call it tau chemical, and tau chemical corresponds to A by A naught equal to 1 over E. So what is this E? Your friend from maths, that E is not a chemical species or something. So tau chemical can be obtained with some effort based on the previous expression that we had. So the tau chemical will be this is okay, but still it is a little difficult to interpret. It can be interpreted, but it will be easier if we make one further assumption, that just for the sake of interpreting, sometimes one concentration is much greater than other. So when that happens, let us say the concentration of B, initial concentration of B is much greater than the initial concentration of A. So one reactant is present in excess, quite possible. So let us say like some radical reacting with air, so there is a lot of oxygen in excess, something like that. So if you have that, then it is easy to show from this expression that tau chemical is this. Tau chemical is this. So this one in red box is easier to understand. What does it tell you? Anything interesting that this tells you? It's actually pretty simple to interpret this. It just tells you that if the reaction rate constant is higher, then the chemical reaction time scale, chemical reaction time scale is smaller, because the time scale is that time corresponding to which A by A naught becomes equal to 1 over E. Okay. How much is 1 over E? E is 2.21, yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. So, how much is 1 over E? How much is 1 over E? 1 over 2.718. Okay, 1 divided by 2.718 will be how much? Yeah, so that is that means a substantial amount of A naught has been consumed. 0.37 roughly. Okay, roughly 0.37. So, concentration of A now, that is at the expiry of time tau chemical, is 37% of its initial concentration, right. So, that time is inversely proportional to reaction rate constant. So, that is something which is easy to appreciate. What does it tell you? It tells you that faster the reaction, higher will be your reaction rate constant and smaller will be the chemical time scale. So, if you have a bimolecular reaction, if you know the reaction rate constant, you can evaluate that, and that will give you some idea of what the chemical reaction time scale is. So, that means much of the reaction will be over in that period of time. It tells you that about 63% it is getting over, 63% of the initial concentration is getting over. Okay, so we will stop here. The next class we will look at the hydrogen oxygen system. So, the next class all this A, B, C, D business will stop for a while. So, we will take actual reactions. That is it. Thank you.